Hello. After the break, it's very exciting. Everybody got to get some fresh air and Cracker Jacks. Last time I had Cracker Jacks was a year ago here. So thank you, Jennifer, for igniting my childhood with Cracker Jacks. I'm Kasey Earnest. I'm the CEO at the Boys and Girls Club of Malibu. One of our panelists in the last section said, before the fire, I was just an architect. Yeah, we were all something before a fire. Before the fire in 2018, I was just a CEO. And now, when my staff introduces who they are and their association to our organization, they say their title and they also say, I work in disaster response services and I'm a care coordinator because that's what we do also. We serve our community, we serve kids, and we also are building resiliency. And we are the ones we've been waiting for, right? I love this title. So I want to introduce you to our panelists who I'm really excited about. This might be the best panel. Sorry, everybody. um, First, we have Nicole, and I'm not sure I'm going to say your name, Huguenin. Let's say it together. Huguenin. It's beautiful. Nicole is a conduit for caring. She just informed me that she is a generosity entrepreneur. Love this. She has helped found two economy-based organizations, Dream Together Crew and Walk to Connect Cooperative. Based upon those profound experiences, coupled with more than 15 years of nonprofit teachings, she has dedicated her life to creating resilient and caring communities. Based in Maui, her current projects include Share Circle that connects the dots of circular waste practices and Maui Rapid Response, a civic response organization modeled after mutual aid and the Hawaiian Ahupua'a. There you go. System. Her work as a generosity entrepreneur is financially supported on and or by sharing Aloha on Exchange Avenue. And then we have my community member, David Hertz, who leads one of, I think, is the most fascinating, impressive, and important brigades, a community brigade that was born in Malibu. Dave himself brings over 4 decades of expertise in wildlife resilience and fire adapted architecture across Southern California. David is the co-founder of the LA County Fire Brigade Division 7, a very important division for us, and a board member of the Los Angeles Emergency Preparedness Foundation, a 501c3 that runs the community brigade. David has been deeply involved on the ground in fire defense efforts. He fought the Franklin and Palisades fire and probably the Broad fire too. It's not on here. We had 3 back-to-back fires. Um, and as an architect, David has overseen fire builds after major wildfires. His Malibu ranch withstood the Woolsey fire thanks to proactive measures like flame retardant coatings, water storage systems, external fire speakers, and ember resistant landscaping and defensive measures. These strategies and systems have informed his integrated approach, designing homes with ember resistant materials, passive fire protection, regenerative systems, and a community focused resilience, which is what we're really here to talk about today. And so I'm very excited. I have some targeted questions that I think, while these two have very different organizations, I'm excited for us to learn the parallels of how we're helping to respond to our communities, to support our communities, and also build resilience within our communities. So let's get right into it because you guys are the subject matter experts here. Can you tell us how your community resilience approaches have worked, and what have been some of your most positive outcomes from those approaches?
I I sometimes I think that I'm the holder of stories, and I pause because I take that very, um, as a sacred thing, and, um, last night, I actually went to dinner, and I met someone that lost his house here, in this fire, a few years ago, and then or several years ago, and then he also, he's a very well-off man. He also lost another house in a island community, from a hurricane, so he lost 2 houses in a row. And I was talking with him, and he had all these resources and all these answers, and then also very clearly said, um, "I still am in debt, and I'm still going through it." And it had been, 10, 15 years between these two things. And and then we got to why I was here, and I think the stories I was sharing are people that didn't have homes, that lived on the beach, that, um, maybe there are elders that their entire family had moved to Oahu instead of Maui, and they're there by themselves and scared in their homes, and, still aren't coming out of their homes, still aren't getting case managers, and I think for myself and my org and really a collective group of grassroots orgs are just still continuing to show up to those people and developing systems around that to continue to hear those stories and then continue to advocate for their needs. We're not necessarily case managers. We can step in and do that. But um, the beauty of being there with those stories, though, is that we can create systems out of it. And so our system really goes, one person has an issue, we connect them to a case manager, and it might be us, it might be somebody else. If two people have an issue, we start to listen a little bit more. If three people have an issue, then we start to do something about it. And the last, if it gets to us being the people that do something about it, it's because there's been a complete system failure for that particular issue. And so, like I told you earlier, like I can't really answer that I'm an executive director. I'll probably fight you if I hear that for you because there's so many hats that we do wear. You can't show up to the multitude of different stories. You can't show up to the very different ways that people experience trauma um, with without treating that really sacredly, and then also though having a system to respond. And so that's for me the what we've done well.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I would like to add to that because when we go through our similar case management, care coordination processes, we like to reference building our web of resilience, right? So many of what you just said is connecting the dots and making that web bigger and stronger. And that's what allows those community members to come out of their homes, to receive services, to tell that story, to be met by people who understand where they're at in that moment. And you can be an executive director or you can be a neighbor.
Yeah.
It's all very important.
We are both. I like to say that the web, if we're successful, that web is actually a trampoline and people are able to
Love
bounce
that.
back.
I'm gonna take that from you.
Yeah. Hmm.
Trampoline.
Great. Yeah, we're clearly in the resilience imperative. As an architect for last 40 years and teaching on ecology and architecture, trying to balance the built environment with the natural, it's become clearly apparent that we have to deal with resilience and how we can use stressors as advantages in systems like anti-fragility. So that's why I got interested in fire, just basically living in uh, the Pyrocene era, and how can we be more resilient? And what I found through after the Woolsey fire, which about 8 years ago, several of us stayed and defended, which is not a policy, but it was very effective. And in the after action report of the Woolsey fire, one of the most effective things was situational awareness by local community members, helping people to evacuate, helping to stay and defend. Again, not an official policy. The policy of LA County Fire is clearly ready, set, go, as it should be. But what we decided is that if people can stay and defend and they can become trained, and we're trained wildland firefighters in the Santa Monica Mountains under LA County. It took about 6 years to get approval through the LA County Board of Supervisors. We have real champions with our chief, Chief Maroney of LA County Fire, and it's been a pilot program. 1 year of training, we get out of our training in October, and we have fires, 3 months, what are called career fires in the Palisades. And what we found was that we can be, as a tenant of resilience, nimble, adaptive, swarm as necessary, and these are tenets of resilience. But more than anything, we're building community, the people that we're interacting with, and becoming much more resilient as a community. Essentially, we could consider these resilience hubs. We currently have 53 brigade members. We have 600 applications for 50 more spots. We're training in November, and with less than a year, we're rapidly expanding, and we think it's also a scalable model.
And just to like bring that home that in really to community, when the Franklin fire broke and we thought that was going to be the worst of the worst for the year because it was pretty bad. The brigade saved one of our local churches that had previously burned in the '07 fire, and subsequently also saved an elementary school and a boys and girls club. Our school ended up being closed for over a month. It's the school that my daughter goes to. But because the brigade was there, those very important structures for kids and community and worship were spared. So I think the brigade underscores its value of I mean, a little bit. It's a huge I mean, it's almost like if you're gonna talk about a hometown hero at this point, I think that everything that you guys do is should be shared and scaled, and it's what is making our community stronger.
Our model really is that we're not the heroes, that the community needs to be their own heroes.
Yeah.
And that's really what this is, we realize that these magnitude of the events that we have are larger than first responders' abilities to be there. And for people to be their own heroes is really the message, whether it's home hardening, it's preparedness, it's helping their community. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, I wrote self-empowerment, collective action, and social change. So, spot on. Um, my next question is how have you each individually through your work influenced the community's ability to change to become more resilient?
I don't think I've done anything, but I think it's more just for in my organization, it's just listening to people, right? And really helping them understand um where they are in their recovery. I was talking with someone earlier about trauma too. It's like sometimes people just need a mirror to make an easy decision and practice making a decision, and that moves them out of their trauma, and then they can be an active like citizen in do a program like this. Um, and and so I think for that we sit with people through that until they can make those decisions, and then we listen and hear what's going where maybe are there some gaps in programs like this. And so I know for us, we've been hearing from a lot of communities like it's really great that we have multiple agencies telling us what should be in our go bag or in our 3-day allotment, or 72-hour allotment. But one, I can't afford it. And two, I don't know if my car could even like my tire's about to blow and I don't know how to pay rent. So, like there's all these barriers to that. We also get phone call. I can't tell you how many phone calls we get from a lot of Hawaiians in the diaspora that are like, my mom's in Maui, but my whole family's in Vegas. Who's looking after my mom? And so for us, we're developing like a not block captain because I know that's a verb that's or a word that's used here, but just block parties so people can come out and like replenish their bags together. They can kind of audit their community and say maybe we want to build a brigade. And I don't know how you guys figured out the insurance issue, but their liability issue. But that's probably the $1 million question. But also, what other resources does our block need? Not just our home, our block. Who's going to adopt auntie over there that is in a wheelchair? Maybe there's 3 families on the block that does that. And so that those are the things that we're moving towards and looking towards as we move away from just straight recovery and into responding for the next time or creating resilience for the next time.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting, the California Foundation quote really about filling the gap. And I think that's what we realize is that there are gaps between first responders and the community. And the way that we could help the community be more resilient is be of the community, have a hyper local kind of contextual response. Nobody knows that community better. What we're doing is we've set beacon boxes up at the beginning. They're big red boxes with a light on it. So first responders are often not from your community. We were just talking about somebody here who lives next to a fire station that thought that's the safe place. Well, if they're the first ones that are gone, they're maybe in another community. All of our firefighters in Malibu were largely in Paradise at the same time because there are often multiple fires during these major red flag conditions. So I think understand the community. I think one of the things that was interesting when meeting with the many bureaucratic processes where people initially may be threatened by volunteer fire brigades, insurance issues, union issues, everything else, was that we're more likely to get people to evacuate when your neighbor comes. And we found that in all of these cases, we're more likely to be the first ones on scene because we each live in our community and we know people that have large animals that are older. We can give watch outs to responders. So with this beacon box, says these are the water sources, these are the roads, these are the turnarounds. And what we found was that other first responders really value us. In our steady state, we've already performed over 600 home ignition zone assessments, the 0 to 5 that we do for free, and we're 100% volunteer or organization and completely self-funded with donations. And so that's helping the community become more resilient. In a perfect world, we don't have to be there. This is the end to pipe solution. And if we can really use this opportunity, especially in the way that we rebuild our communities that are ravaged so that they are inherently more resilient and have these nimble, community-based systems, then there will be less destruction in the future.
I just had my community brigade home assessment, so I just went through the process and learned so much. I feel empowered. I feel empowered to make decisions about my property that I didn't feel empowered to make before. I feel empowered to now communicate that to the 2,000 individuals that we're case managing through Boys and Girls Club to talk about this in a context that I feel comfortable sharing and why folks should do that. This is all part of the web of resilience that creates the trampoline on the response end, on the preparedness side. It's really fantastic. I'm going to use a term that we use in Boys and Girls Club. It's tied to almost every club's mission in some way or another, and it's addressing the needs of those who need us the most. Right? That is our mission, that is our call to action, and that changes day to day based upon what's happening in our community, disaster, how children are being impacted, how families are being impacted. I just want to know from both of you, in your scopes of work, how are you meeting those that you serving those that need you the most and or those who are in underrepresented pockets of your community or the larger community if we're thinking of Los Angeles?
Sure. That for us is part of our mission, which is if you are serving those that need you the most first, you actually will already have the systems in place for everybody else that needs that system as well. So, and that actually traces back to our roots and how we came together. I actually don't like to say that we were founded upon anything. We were just a bunch of aunties providing care in our neighborhoods that needed to be formalized because of COVID, and then needed to be formalized even further because of the fire. And as we did that, though, it strengthened our ability to respond to the needs that were already there. Uh, and and those needs, like you said, shift. I just yes, this morning I got a text message from uh actually, it's probably too, I don't want to, people will know who this is. So I want to try to figure out a different way to say this. Somebody was really succumbing to their trauma last night. And a friend of mine actually stopped that person from ending their life. And but she knew to call us, not to get what the answer is, but just like, how do I support this person? And for us, I think that it's just really helping everybody be able to respond like that rather than passing it off to another agency, or to know when to pass it off, but just to be there with that person. And that's what we do, is we're just there with anybody that calls or is in need, always. And so those daily emergencies, I think, lead up to us having a little bit more resilience to responding to bigger emergencies that affect all.
And the consistency of being there, right? That's incredible. It really, really is, and the more you do that and the more you build that trust and the more that that community extends and the more people you get to help because they're gonna refer, right? I'm sure you get a lot of people referring.
Lots of referrals, right? And I think too, I was talking earlier with someone about case managers. I I can't, I'm still calling, or people are still calling us, and we've been saying for a year, let's get you a case manager. And all the reasons why folks don't, most of them have nothing to do with their resistance to a case manager. It has to do with their trauma and how many applications they've been sitting and filling out and repeating, and their backgrounds with trauma and other traumas that have been compounded on top of that. And so um, when you've been there with them before, y sometimes, like, I know I've sat and interpreted their anger on the phone with the case manager to get through the process, and other times, I've just been the call, and the person has given me permission to speak for them. You would just go through that motion, and that builds trust, right? And then when it's needed to make them move a little faster than maybe at their own pace, we can nudge them a little bit more than just somebody from the outside that they haven't seen ever before. Yeah.
Well, I like the concept of webs and, other compassionate, um, empathetic groups, all come together and, in the disaster and it's not necessarily just thinking about themselves, but the interconnectedness of the whole, really builds the resiliency. Um, there are many gaps in terms of not only the home hardening, we're all risk. Fires are a big risk, but we're there for all risk. And of course, after the fires, we had floods, and there will be an earthquake, and there will be other things. So I think it's developing this web, developing these partners, working across multiple platforms with agencies that builds that web of resilience that's really empowering. Right now, I'm actually leading a AI-enabled agent software system for free screening of plans that are submitted to the building department for non-codified fire resilience. There are a lot of codes move very slowly. There's a lot of things that we've witnessed personally watching homes ignite that we could offer. There'll be a human overviewer on every one of these things and helping to train. I would say also, uh, people that do stay behind are cut off and have no support. So we played a really integral role of helping people that stayed with essential services, medicine, helping people to retrieve things, rescuing koi fish to animals, to bringing food and gasoline and things. And if again, filling those gaps. So every incident, we realize where there are vulnerabilities, we try to fill those vulnerabilities.
That's great. Kind of building on that, what advice would you give to others who are trying to promote or build resilience within their communities, especially when, maybe trust is low, resources are limited, every community has its own challenges, but where would you start? How would you advise someone to start approach or a group? It doesn't have to be an individual. Where would you begin?
Sure. Um, I think, you know, we're right now in an era where large dependencies and the false senses of security are being dismantled. So there's if you can't rely on, say, the government to fill this, there's never been a time that's been more critical for people to take ownership and responsibility for their own defense and resilience. So, I think community-based organizations starting locally, building these coalitions, creating a framework for others, and all of you that are doing things have a reproducible system and methodology that can be transferred so that it's scalable. And then the more there's more of that ecosystem of ways in which they all interact and benefit the entire system.
I'm trying to pick which piece of advice. And, I think it's to listen even when you don't need something from someone. Like, find a way to listen, and that will go so much further when you actually need something. You need a community group to answer a question, even though they're crashing out on an issue. Um, and to really hear all voices, not just the ones that are the loudest. I would say it's safe to say in this room, we're probably the loudest voices in the room. And really a sign of success is finding a way to hear the quietest voices in the room, and move from there.
I love that. Um, Another term, actually, I think our national slogan for Boys and Girls Clubs of America this year is future ready, right? Which is really beautiful when you're thinking about how you can guide children and create this path of not just success, but of empowerment as an individual. That's really our goal as an organization is to empower youth to be the very best version of themselves with the resources that we have and the mentoring and the guidance when we're building resilience, right? Like that's who we are. That's what we do. It's all very transferable to what we're talking about here today in terms of communities. We can't have strong children if we don't have resilient communities, right? They're all connected. What does your future ready, resilient community look like in top form?
I'm not the person from my community to answer that, and there's others in this room from Maui that should. Um, I would say when our group of organizations gets together and does a little dreaming every quarter or so, we're really dreaming about a stronger web. We're really dreaming about voices being heard, many different voices being heard, and if I'm being honest for myself, we always say out of those 6 organizations, at least 3 of us should not be there if our dreams are coming true. And so we actually really do a lot of work to not, especially in the funding worlds, like, we're not trying to take money that's gonna keep us there always. And then we're also preparing our staff for that too. That could happen tomorrow, doubtful, probably be in a few generations, maybe, but, um, for my organization, it would be that we aren't there, we're not needed.
I would say I would take out the word future preparedness because we don't really have time. I mean, we need preparedness now, and that's really the call to action. I think that there are just many ways you speak about children. There's so many opportunities. These are things not to be scared about. They're actually opportunities to become empowered by that our kids are going to live in an era of much more extreme things. Every event is historic. They're creating new language for weather events and extreme. We live in this remarkably equitable comfort zone on the planet, and it's easy to see with 6 major extinctions, with civilizations, after 600 years of 800 years that, they've changed, and we just are only looking at a small piece. It helps to understand the context of these things and for opportunities. We're actually working with a lot of at-risk kids that are coming up through the brigades and become seeing opportunities to be a part of it, that are offering a kind of structure that they may not have, and it's really quite rewarding.
Yeah, I'm so in awe of both of you and really everyone in the room that's committed to, being a part of response and preparedness, and also through this, lens of empathetic support, right? Because that's really what this is about. Through empathy, we can understand one another, and that allows us to then support one another and build resilience within our communities. And we can't do it alone. And somebody referenced that earlier, and we did through song, right? Lean on me. We have to do it together. Um, is there anything else that you guys want to leave our audience with before we close?
I think there's two things for me is I think a practice for those of us that are find ourselves in this space, either on purpose or not, is to really be able to hold many things true at once. And that's a practice. You really have to practice having many truths at once. And then I have found that as we have practiced that, we've been able to trust people more. And instead of making people wrong for the way their trauma showed up. And um and then for me personally, that's like a personal wish, because then I don't have to spend a bunch of money to prove that people can be trusted. I don't have to, like, right now we just finished a 6-month pilot program for 18 people, half of which were homeless in Lahaina. And everybody says, well, they're gonna spend all their money on alcohol. What they really spent their money on, and I could print it out for you because the technology we're using tells you live time. The 1, 2, and 3 was food. Grocery store, Foodland in Lahaina, Costco, and then the 4th one was gas to go get that food. 5th one was restaurants. Um, but I have had to prove that that's what was actually happening, and we had this little thing on that program. We had this little toggle that you could, push on or off, so if people could, not purchase, alcohol or online gaming or porn. So we turned it off so that your card wouldn't work if you did that. And in our data, only 2 people attempted over the entire 6 months. Um, and and most of the people in this program are called thieves and crackheads and that sort of thing. And but there's still people too, and there's still places where if you're holding many things true at once, you can still find the place where you can trust them, the line where you can trust them and have them practice good decisions. So yeah, I think for me, it's really that practice many truths at one time.
I love that, and also the technology that Nicole's referencing is called the Esther card, and we actually our case managers interfaced with Nicole, and we were able to learn about the Esther card, and we're using the Esther card and implementation to provide cash assistance to fire survivors. And it's really the other piece that's really beautiful about it is it empowers the survivor to spend the money in the way that best serves them in that moment versus mandating how you spend that money and turn in a receipt and do it's very empowering.
For those of you that are case managers in this room, it also saves you a ton of money on your accounting, and a ton. Like, you can just have one bookkeeper and you're good because the technology does it for you. You're not writing checks to landlords. It's really literally giving people their ability to practice choice and not be in systems that enable you to be dependent on things. So I'm happy to. Actually, I think I'm talking about that later on, but yeah.
Well, I see 6 seconds out, so I don't wanna be we are the ones that you've been waiting for and, be late, but I would just end with, you know, it's a real honor to be here and to see all of you all doing your own things, and then networking opportunity that Jennifer and the organization put together is wonderful because it's this cross pollination and the interaction that really starts to be a force multiplier and create a cascade of benefits.
Well, thank you both very much and for the work that you're doing. And I'll just leave you with this. True preparedness is not just about having to go bag, it's about having a to go community. We were already the experts of our own lived experiences, and the solutions don't lie in more outside control. They lie in amplifying the voices, the wisdom, and the networks already within our neighborhoods.